In today's video, I'm ranking every weapon in Cuphead from worst to best. I'll also give my 3 bosses that I like to use each weapon on. This is completely my opinion and I'd love to hear yours below. Let's get into it. Unsurprisingly, number 9 is Twist Up. In my opinion, it lacks damage potential and is really awkward to use. It's only designed to fight bosses that are above you and in the most convenient position. It's mostly only usable when stood still, which is also awkward. The EX move is creative, but feels like a worse version of an EX further up on the list. For the 3 bosses, I'd say the first is the Devil. It's solid in all of its phases, but is a little awkward to use in the first phase. Next up is King Dice. It's good against Mangosteen and may be useful against King Dice himself. And finally, Captain Brinybeard. You have to stand still and in a specific spot, but it's better than most weapons on this specific boss. Number 8 is the Chaser. It has terrible damage potential, and it doesn't feel fulfilling when it's used. The tracking AI can mess up and circle around the minions. It also doesn't kill the minions very quickly. It is useful, however, against very fast and awkward bosses to hit, as the tracking is pretty good. Its EX move can be used as a shield against minion hits, which is quite unique, but generally it doesn't do any damage to the boss itself, which can feel like a waste of a card. The first of the 3 bosses I use Chaser on is Saltbaker. It's very good to use on the final phase, as it is very difficult to track the heart, but it's also quite useful in the first phase, as he moves around the stage very quickly. Next up is Rumour Honeybottoms. It's good generally against her, as her hitbox is all over the place, and it's typically difficult to hit downwards. And finally, Brinybeard again, as it's constantly hitting while dodging all the projectiles, and it also avoids the awkwardness of hitting him in the position that he's in. Usually you'd have to stand very close, but with this you can just dodge as you like. Number 7 is the Peashooter. It is very simple, as it is the default weapon. The damage output is mediocre and it feels generally quite unimpactful. There's no satisfaction out of its use. It's easy to use against most bosses though, and is decent at killing minions. The EX move is cool and does feel impactful though. The 3 bosses for the Peashooter, starting with Beppy. It's good to use against all of his phases and destroys the ducks easily. Against Ruby and Croak, it's the best weapon to kill the flies and is constantly going to deal damage in all phases. Against the Root Pack, it's easy to use and likely it will be the only time that you actually use the Peashooter, because after this boss you'll have some coins. Number 6 is the Lobber. Hits don't feel incredibly impactful with it, but I know it's doing a lot of damage. It's only useful against a small range of bosses and is genuinely useless against most. I do like its design though, and I like using it against bosses that can actually be hit by it. The EX move feels weak in its design and sounds, but does deal good damage. I use this against Grim Matchstick, as it is useful on every phase, especially useful on the first 2. Rumour Honeybottoms, because it's good for the 2 phases where the hitbox is below you. It's also easy to hit in all phases because of the easy manoeuvrability around the stage. And finally, Werner Werman. You're always reasonably close to him, so it's quite easy to hit, and that means there's a huge damage output, but it still gives you enough distance to dodge the attacks that he puts out. Number 5 is the Converge. It is definitely the best looking weapon in the game. I really like the quick fire rate of it, and it's unfortunate that its damage is still quite low because of that. And if you want max damage, you have to stand still. It is, though, a very good minion killer and general damage dealer to big bosses, because of course the multi-hits on big bosses will hit ×2. It's also useful to kill things that come from above without actually needing to aim. The EX move is incredibly cool. I like beams, so it works for me. 3 bosses for the Converge, starting with the Phantom Express. It makes the first phase incredibly easy, and it kills the pumpkin minions automatically on all phases. Next is the Devil. It's very good at killing the flying minions on the second to last phase, and it generally does a solid amount of damage on the last phases. And then Ruby and Croak. It's good at killing the flies and does 2 times damage on the first phase as the hitbox of both frogs are hit separately by the weapon. Number 4 is Spread. It's satisfying when you're able to actually use it. It's impossible to use against certain bosses and is only really effective against the minions that get close to you. It's almost a guaranteed take against the bosses that it can hit, but of course there's little bosses that it can hit easily. The EX move, in my opinion, is quite ugly, and it's difficult / awkward to get max damage from. Only a few bosses can actually be hit by the full EX move. I'd use this on the Root Pack, as you can stay close to all the phases pretty consistently, especially good against the Onion. Sally Stage Play. The first and second phases are beaten incredibly quickly, and it's easy to do. And finally the Devil, as you're always close to his hitbox, especially after the first phase. Number 3 is the Crackshot. It's nice and easy to get good value from it. It does more damage than the Chaser, but is less reliable when targeting fast things. It does extra damage up close, which means the damage negation on its tracking isn't that big an issue. The EX move can be parried and counts towards the Heart Charm, so that combination is incredibly good. I use the Crackshot against Briny of course, because it's good damage when you're near him, but you can still keep up damage when you have to move away to dodge things. I also use it against Moonshine Mob, as it kills all the minions easily while still damaging the boss decently. And finally Mortimer Freeze, because it's good at consistently damaging the first and last phase. It also helps to get parries from the Heart Ring, as it's difficult to get parries on the boss in general. Number 2 is the Charge Shot. It is very satisfying when it is used effectively. It definitely needs the most skill out of all the weapons in the game, but it rewards that skill with large damage output. The downside, however, is that most shots do need to be aimed and timed well. It looks really cool when doing it though. The EX move feels quite unimpactful and doesn't work against most bosses, as you have to get incredibly close. I use the Charge Shot against Grim Matchstick because it is really fun to use against him, as you have to position yourself on the clouds before shooting. It's very good against the last phase to stop the fireballs from splitting. I also use this against King Dice, as it is generally good against all the mini-bosses and is okay against King Dice himself. And finally, Goopy Legrand. Most weapons have wasted shots against Goopy, but the charge time is very similar to his jump timing, so you'll be able to effectively hit him with the Charge Shot. And finally, number 1 is the Roundabout. This is definitely my favourite weapon in the game. It deals a ton of damage and feels like it does. Even if you miss the boss or look away for a second, the shots will just come back and hit it anyway. It's sometimes difficult to use against minions, especially if they are close to the ground, but it is generally okay against most. The damage per shot is good enough to one-shot most minions as well. The EX move is satisfying to use, as each hit from it is audible and deals good damage. I use the Roundabout against the Moonshine Mob, as it kills all the minions effectively, and you can position yourself to do a ton of damage in every phase. I use it on Ribby and Croak, as it kills the flies effectively while still dealing a decent amount of damage to the boss. On the final phase you have to move backwards a lot, but that doesn't affect the damage output of this weapon. And finally, Beppy the Clown, because it's very good at damaging every phase. It kills the duck with ease, it kills the balloon animals with ease, and does a ton of damage, plus kills the penguins in the final phase. Thank you so much for watching through to the end. If you're here, it probably means that you like my content, so you should subscribe. I'm doing a giveaway at 500 subscribers. See you in the next video.